So a lot of times I have guests on and I don't want them to get like really caught up saying the same type of thing that they've kind of said on previous podcasts. I love to learn new things about them.
Hmm.
You're very unique, and we're going to get into your book, uh, The Death by BS. We'll probably talk about Go-Givers and the influence Bob Berg had on you as well. But I kind of want to know things about you that maybe you've never discussed before. But what I really want to start off, one is your name. Like, what nationality are you? Like, where, I know you live in Canada, right? Vancouver now, but where were you originally from? Because I know you came over in the 70s, right?
Yeah, I came to Canada in 76. So I was born in East Africa in Uganda.
Wow.
Yeah, and I left Uganda in 1970 when my dad passed away. And we went to Pakistan. And then from Pakistan to London, back to Pakistan, and I landed in Canada in 76.
My goodness. Yeah, that's one of the, your stories that I remember you telling me about, something happening at that point in time that changed the rest of your life,
Yeah.
which we'll get into. And a lot of people may not know it. You're in Vancouver, right? And I've spent months in Vancouver. I mean, I think what's interesting is as soon as I kind of met you, I stopped traveling to Canada. And previously, I was probably in Canada as much as I was in the United States. I would have had an incredible opportunity to hang out with you because I used to deal with Lululemon, which their corporate headquarters is there. So I was always there. Obviously, I'm in Victoria. I used to go there a lot, Calgary, Alberta. I've spent months in even Edmonton, all different times of the year, freezing to death. But I also used to host a Lululemon golf outing there where we would have a Porsche. And if you get a hole in one, you get a Porsche. But it's so beautiful there. And, you live there. And I miss that place because I think that's just such it's actually, I think, one of the most beautiful places in North America, in my opinion. How did you end up, so you moved to Vancouver and you just decided to stay there with your family?
Yeah, so we actually landed in Montreal on February something and in the snow, went to Ottawa to get our immigration papers done, and then came to Vancouver a couple months later. And we've been here ever since then. I had a short stint. I moved to Dallas for a couple of years. But other than that, I've been to Vancouver for all that time.
That's interesting. That's
now
crazy.
you asked me about my name. My name,
Yeah.
Likky is really not my real name. My dad named me that the day I was born. But my real name is Liaquat Ali. And now, just by saying that, people are like, well, how do you say that? How do you spell it? So I'm kind of glad Licky's there. But imagine growing up with a name like Likky with racism and and bullying, right? So it was a tough upbringing, but now it's like it's there, and I'm not going to change it. We're going to leave it the way it is. That's my character.
I think that's a great name, to be honest with you, because it's so unique. And if you Google your name, obviously, I don't think there's anyone else with that.
There's actually two other people out there with the name. They're using it.
Oh my goodness. Because if there is, it's still very limited. And
It is.
And my father used to call me Tiger my whole life. And I lived in Orlando, Florida. You want to hear a funny story? And then we used to collect money in all the top, we did vending in all the restaurants, nightclubs, gentlemen's clubs, everything. So we had when we'd have a limo driver or whatever, they'd come to the airport and put Tiger because they thought my name was Tiger. And one time I was coming off from Vegas, and Tiger Woods then lived in Orlando. I once came off an airplane and I was getting my luggage, and the guy had assigned the limo driver to pick us up, or the driver, and it said Tiger. And there was like 200 people just waiting. I walked off. I said, I'm Tiger. He knew me, right? The guy thought, oh, okay. I don't think he thought he was picking up Tiger Woods. I would have think they would have told him that. So he's like, oh, okay, you're Tiger. So then we start walking off, and then everyone starts following us. And then a couple people come to me because I used to be a lot heavier, and they're like, are you Tiger Woods's, bodyguard? Where's Tiger gonna can I get an autograph of Tiger? I said, I'm Tiger Woods. I said, I'm not Tiger. My nickname's Tiger. So it's kind of funny when you have nicknames or something that really, because if I see people in Florida all the time, they scream Tiger, and most of my family members call me that as well.
Right.
Oh, it's crazy what we grow up in, right? To a certain degree. So I want to start backwards a little bit. I want to get right into the book, because I think a lot of times people jump in a podcast. They don't want to wait to hear the story a lot of times, especially if you've done numerous amounts of podcasts or you've spoke a lot about your past. which is an amazing story in itself. But I know you have this new book, Death by BS. Let's, I want to talk about you being a navigator as far as blind spots, because I don't think anybody's unscathed. I think we all have blind spots. I don't care how wealthy you are, how poor you are, how healthy you are. I think no matter what, we have to understand that we can always do better, or we have things that we have to overcome. So you can.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. It's for sure. We all have blind spots. And this is a book that I wrote beginning of this year and launched it. But I want to just, before I even start that, I want to just talk a little bit about, you mentioned Lululemon. And Lululemon actually has a big part in my life today.
Really?
And it's an interesting coincidence. So 10 years ago, I was sitting at a personal development workshop, and Lululemon goes to these all the time, and they were there, and I had a chance to get up there and share an experience of mine. And the jokester I was back then, I said, I want to be like Lululemon. I want to just have an organization like that. So I kind of joked about that. Then I shared my story. Then I sat down, and 3 Lululemon managers came to me during break and said, what did you mean by that? I said, look, I love you guys' culture, how you are, and what you stand for. They go, great. You know what? Tomorrow's Monday. We've got 4 hours free. We want to come and do a workshop for you and your team. And I go, okay, yeah. First of all, I couldn't afford it. I didn't want to say yes, but I didn't want to commit to something. They go, no, this is no charge. We want to come in and do it. They came in and did a workshop for us. And it was around creating your life by design.
Yes.
And literally took us through a journey of mapping out my life over the next 10 years. And this is exactly 10 years ago. 2 weeks ago, I'm sitting with my best friend. We're having a great meal, and his daughter is such a cute 13-year-old, starts bugging me. She goes, you're old. I go, I'm not old. I'm as old as your dad, And he goes, yeah, I know, but Likky, we're turning 55 this year. I'm going, no, we're not. We're turning 54. He says, no, we're not. We're turning 55.
Right.
And it wasn't the age that got to me. Because I knew at 55, my 10-year goal was supposed to be done. So a little bit of panic struck. I haven't achieved what I need to achieve. All those blind spots were coming in. I'm not good enough. I don't commit. So I had a bit of a restless sleep that night. Next morning, I got up and I read my 10-year goals, 10-year life design 10 years ago.
Yes.
And I've been working with a coach for every year. And, Rich, I was pleasantly surprised that I was only about 94% away from achieving all those goals.
It's amazing.
And in that life by design, it said to write a book.
Gotcha.
Now, I didn't really think I was going to write a book this year based on that design. I'd written this design, I created the life, but this year the book actually got launched. Now, talking about the book, the book is, people ask, why did you write this? And if I can simply just say it, it's an apology to all the people in my lives. And to preface that a bit more, it's more about, I've laid out my entire findings of myself, my own BS that I was carrying, the lack of trust, not believing people, not believing in myself. When you have those limiting beliefs and you have those blind spots, you really can't be an incredible leader. So this was a deep dive inside myself and an apology to my ex-employees, to my partner, to my friends that I mistreated. I wasn't a bad person.
No.
It would have been a lot better. So that's what the book is about. And I share a lot of my stories about trust in there. I share a lot of stories about my limiting belief about not being good enough and not belonging. We talked about my immigration journey here. And then we talked a little bit about Bob Berg. My immigration journey ties into Bob Berg. And well, that's 40 years gap, but it does. Because when I landed in Canada, my teacher in Ottawa asked me to share my story.
Yeah, this is an amazing story.
Yeah.
This is honest. If someone's watching this, don't get off. Because this is for the next 5 minutes. I think this is, and I never forgot this story. It's honestly an amazing story. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want people to know how this is a game changer. I think that when you hear something like this, I honestly think you'll never forget it. So please go on, Likky.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate that. So when my teacher had asked me to share my immigration process and the story down to Canada, and I got in front of the class, English wasn't my first language. And as a 10-year-old, you don't care. You just get up there and start talking. And I started talking, and a few of the kids started laughing. And one of the kids yelled, "Go back to where you came from." Mm-hmm. And then more kids laughed, and the next kid yells, "Go back to where you came from." And I actually looked at my teacher, and I go to her, kind of went like this, shook my shoulders. And she kind of shrugged her shoulders back because I don't know what to do. She's never experienced this. So I couldn't speak anymore. So I went back in my chair and started crying. And then the next day, the life of Likky not belonging, not being good enough started. And in fact, I developed a stutter from that moment, not being comfortable with myself. Fast forward 40 years, I sold my IT business. I'm sitting at a beach in Mexico, and I woke up totally depressed. Mm-hmm. You know, in between there, you know, I dropped out of high school, but I had 7 successful businesses. How can I be depressed? I mean, you know, I did well. You know, we had a beautiful house, had a great family, but this wasn't there.
Sure.
When I woke up that morning, I called up my coach. I said, "What, you know, this is what's going on." He goes, "Likky, you've lost your passion. You're not talking to people. You're not helping anybody. So what do? You call up Bob Berg, Mr. Go-Giver himself." So I said, "Bob, this is what's going on." He goes, "Well, why don't you come to Orlando? We're holding this workshop, and you can be a speaker and a coach." I said, "Well, I can't be a speaker. I've got a stutter." And he goes, "Yeah, I hear that. But you can be a coach for sure, because you talk to people all the time anyways." I'd given away hundreds of his books already. So I loved his methodology. So I said, sure. So I went down to Orlando, did training. And on the third day, he does this exercise. Him and Kathy did this exercise about, they asked you to stand up. So it was my turn. I stood up, and they acknowledged me. Bob acknowledged me for who I was, the person, the kind, the gentle, the trusting human being. Kathy gets up and says, very similar, but different. Third person, fourth person. Now by the fifth person, I'm in tears. Now this is when I'm, 45 years old.
Right.
And Bob's like, "What's going on, Likky?" I said, "Well, I've never heard these words before. They're touching." And he looks at me, he goes, "I wonder if you never listened to these words before."
From others.
Of others, yeah.
Yes.
So he said, "I invite you to listen to the rest of the people, and then we can talk." So, 10 people go through, then they acknowledge me. It was heartwarming, and I felt a sense of relief. And I sat down and it was like, okay, this is great. That night, I'm taking a flight back from Orlando to Dallas, talking to a passenger next to me. And I quickly realized it was without a stutter.
That's a miracle, dude. Like, that's a legit, like you hear things like that. I don't know. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. And so I turned to her. I go, I'm going to ask you a silly question. She's like, "Okay." And I go, "Did I speak to you with a stutter at all?" She goes, "No. What do you mean?" Then I kind of shared this with her, and she goes, "No way." So then I get to DFW, and I'm this crazy stranger walking up to people and trying to just talk to them to see if I had a stutter. And I didn't. And I had this euphoric sensation coming through me. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. I get home and I tell my wife this. And she looks at me.
That'd be amazing. She's probably never heard you speak without a stutter.
Well, no, what? No, I'd be okay with her, because people I'm comfortable with, I'd be okay with. If I'm having a one-on-one, I'd be okay with.
That's
the moment I got uncomfortable, the stutter shows up.
Gotcha.
So she's like, "Great. It took 10 strangers for you to listen to what I've been telling you for years." Yeah. And I'm like, "Damn, you're right." And, she's been telling me these things for years. My friends and family have it. I never chose to listen. Yeah. So receiving the good that comes my way was really hard, because I had this guard up. I had this facade that I don't deserve it. I'm not good enough. So whatever you're saying, you want something. So now the trust issues came up.
Absolutely.
So it was a vicious cycle. Now I wonder how many of our leaders and human beings that we're talking to are going through the same things.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bob Burr, I don't know if you know, I mean, that's how we ended up connecting, is through Bob.
Yeah.
And Kathy, who's amazing. And a CEO of a company actually reached out to me and said, Rich, there's this book. Did you ever hear of it? Go Givers. And I said, no. And they're like, Rich, you love just helping and networking and, it's all about giving or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I'm kind of, like, you're like, yeah, okay. And they're like, he's like, immediately get this book. So I went and got the book. I read it over the weekend. And then I look and I read it and it's Bob Burg. And I said, well, let me just reach out to this guy on LinkedIn because I've written a couple books myself and I don't classify myself as some unbelievable author. So I just connected and said, let me see if I could connect. He connects with me and I said, listen, I read your book. I think it's really amazing, honestly. And they have a series of books too. And he's like, thank you so much. And he's like, I noticed you live in Florida or whatever. I said, yeah. And then he goes, if you're ever headed, towards Jupiter, because I'm in Orlando. And I said, well, I'm headed to South Beach, actually, like in a week or two. He's like, let's meet for coffee. I said, oh, that sounds wonderful. Before you know it, I'm having coffee with this guy. And then the next time I'm talking to the CEO who gave me the book, he's like, Rich, did you read the book? I said, I read the book and I met the author. He's like, Rich, that's you. That's so you. I can't even tell you. I said, would you like to meet him? And he was kind of not like he loved the book, but it was like, hey, I'll introduce you to Bob. Some people kind of get intimidated with that, even though they're a CEO of a really well-known company. But when you meet Bob, the calmness and the confidence that he gives you, something's different about that guy. And I'm not just saying this. Anybody out there, check out Go Givers, check out Bob Burg. He's amazing. He's all over the place, obviously. And he's a game changer, I think a lot of times. With, my book, I'm just going to kind of give you, my first book was just an outline of what I was going to do for a business plan. And then someone said, Rich, man, just make this into a book. That was my first book called The Model Bible. So I kind of took that outline and made it into a book, but it took me a couple of years because it was totally, you're going back. Then I decided to write another book like a crazy man, The Wingman. But I've been writing previous screenplays, right? I think a lot of people underestimate how much time and effort it takes to make a book, because I think a lot of people want to write a book. In your case, you kind of built up to, why you kind of wanted to write the book. How much time did you put into this book? Creating this? Was this your life journey? Is it an autobiography a little bit? Is it more, because I haven't read it yet. So
it took about a year and a half of mini books. And then during COVID, we compiled it into a book. I hired a couple of editors to finish it off. Honestly, it's a compilation of everything. It's a biography of my history, my story, my learnings, everything in there. The new book that we're writing, and it's my business partner and I, it's about transforming leaders into becoming incredible people. Mm-hmm. It's about how to take those blind spots and do something with them. If you think about who we are, what we have, we see the world so differently, right? We see the world in a way that we assume the world's supposed to be. And we don't look in the mirror that well. We don't really see how clear it is. 100%. And on top of that, we don't really see ourselves clearly either.
Never. I never think we do.
No, and we have this vision of ourselves. Speaking of which, I did a course in New York a couple of years ago, and in our little cohort, I asked them a question. I said, hey, how do I show up when I walk into a room? And they kind of snicker. They go, you really want to know? I go, yeah, I do. And they go, well, Likky, you show up as a pompous ass. Mm. And I go, okay. I was taken aback a bit. They go, well, hang on a second. Until you speak, then you're kind, gentle, and warm. I go, so explain to me, what does that mean? They go, well, you walk in and you're all dressed up usually, and then you don't smile. So when I walk into a room, I never used to smile. I thought I smiled, so I don't even know right now. Rich, am I smiling right now?
I think you look like half smiling, but you're talking, so it's very hard,
Yeah, so I have I think I had bad teeth, so I don't smile as often, so now it's become a habit. Now I make it a point to smile because I don't want to be known as pompous.
Sure, yeah.
But as leaders or as individuals, do we even ask that question? What's your first impression of me? And will we do anything about that? Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Right, so we see ourselves clearly. And then the other thing is, we got to get out of our own way. If we get out of our own way, then we can actually create some impactful goals and reach the life that we deserve. We deserve so much, but we don't even look at ourselves that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then we
Yeah.
need to show up really authentically, right? Show up as who we are. And if we think about authenticity, people say, I'm happy, or I'm this and I'm that. No, what's your soul? Who are you truly
Yeah.
as a person? So this is kind of where we're going with our book, and then empowering others and connecting with others, and then really influencing others. So we're putting all this into a book and dealing with blind spots and giving you a how-to on how to resolve these things.
Nice. My image consulting, I talk about exactly what you just said. I usually say start off with a smile. But like you said, a lot of people with their teeth are afraid to do that. And I'm like, if you're going to have a conversation with someone you can't even smile and you're thinking about your teeth, we already are going to have a problem. It could go for your hair. It could go for your weight, your height. We can go on forever, your clothing. We got to, in my opinion, a lot of times, like talk about blind spotting, let's just start with ourselves a little bit. When we're talking to somebody or when we enter a room, what do we truly feel like? Are we confident? What's our posture like? What are we sending off? I talk about it a lot of times because a lot of people don't even think about that. They're good at judging everybody else kind of coming through the door, right? Like, look at that person. What's he do? What's more worried about what someone else looks like than themselves, or more worried about what they're saying than what they're saying, or judging them instead of kind of, I don't mean to judge yourself, but yeah, what do you bring to the table? I also think a lot of times people do not understand the way they behave, to a certain degree. They don't understand that a lot of times they may be lashing out. They may be very abusive. They may be horrible to be around. It could go for being in a relationship, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, friendships, family, parents. A lot of people have everybody else to blame, but never really take an honest approach and say, what am I kind of contributing here? Is it bad or is it good? Am I coming from a place of love or am I coming at a place of battle? So I love everything you say about when you talk about these blind spots, because they're very similar, I think, to a lot of things that I talk to my clients about, because we all are constantly overcoming these things throughout our life. It could be age, again, weight, it could be anything. We're going to be going through different things constantly throughout our entire life. If you plan on living to 80 or 90, you're not going to go unscathed, So I love that when you talk about these blind spots. It's such a unique concept.
Yeah, Rich, you talk about image consulting and how important image is, and it really is important. However, I'm going to say there's a yes and, which is the image inside of our bodies, who we are internally, plays just as big a part as who we show up as outside.
Yeah.
And knowing ourselves inside and seeing our behaviors and our triggers and our impulses has a bigger play than how we physically show up, because we physically can't show up in any way if we're not comfortable inside our own skin.
100%. Yeah.
And that's the part that I love having conversations with people about, saying, what is it that you need? Where do you want to be? What's stopping you? How do you show up? What has stopped you in the past? And within a conversation or two, we can get that dealt with, and now they can start moving forward. Our assessment, I think you've taken our assessment. It highlights blind spots in 4 minutes. And maybe we can share that with the group after and put a link in there. But I will say that assessment will give you some tools on resolving some of your own blind spots right off the bat. Are you a motivator? Are you an analyzer? So, for example, I'm a connector, meaning I love talking to people, and I deal with conversations differently. I throw stuff on the wall. If I showed you my wall right now, I've got sticky notes all over.
Right.
I just see what sticks.
Yeah.
But then my wife here is an analyzer. So just small story, imagine wanting to go on a holiday. So I would say, hey, let's go to Hawaii. She's like, okay, perfect. The next day, I get this 30-page email about the sand we're going to be stepping on and the Michelin 5-star restaurants and the lava history. And I'm like, I don't know what you mean. I want to go on a holiday. Why is this important to me?
Right.
But for her, detail is important. For me, it's not. So we would never go because I would never get to the point where we're going and how much it's going to cost me. So now that we're aligned in that on that subject, she'll send me an email saying Hawaii, 12 days, X amount of dollars. And then the 30-page email. So now I may read some of that. Whereas with me, I'm throwing stuff on the wall. Let's go look at that. Let's go do this. And she's like, okay, he's just throwing stuff on the wall. None of it really stands until he actually takes a step. But understanding each other's styles, understanding what our blind spots are and how we behave, and meeting people halfway creates a better connection. Yeah. Now, Rich, connections are so important to us, right? You know, Bob Burg, it's all about relationships and connections. And you and I are very much like that as well. But how many of us are truly connected and vulnerable with the people in our lives? When do we get vulnerable? And why don't we get vulnerable then?
Right.
What's the blind spot that's in the way of getting vulnerable?
Yeah, for sure. You talk about that, you know, what was it? The analyzing, right? And I had once somebody said, Rich, you got a big A on your chest. He goes, because you overanalyze everything. And that was something like, either I'm all like, I don't care, like, hey, let's go to Hawaii, let's wing it, right? Or then on the flip side, I'm like, but wait, when I get to Hawaii, I got to do this. Like, I got to go here. I got to go, you know, Dole Pineapple. I got to go to Honolulu. I got to get, you know, wherever I'm at. And I go one extreme or the other. And I had to kind of break free from that. And I think a lot of us have to learn how to have freedom in life in general. Now, you know, you got the blind spots, right? But also understand that it could also become a prison. I think a lot of these type of blind spots as well. Is kind of what I'm saying. So where you're just, I think a lot of people too beat themselves up because they do figure out they have these blind spots in these issues, but they don't know how to overcome them to a certain degree.
I agree, but sorry to interrupt. I agree, but there's a different side of it. Yeah, it is a prison. And my business partner, Kevin literally was in prison. And, you know, he has a story around blind spots in prison. And I was in prison with that stutter story for 40 years.
Sure.
Right? There's a literal, there's an emotional prison. A lot of us don't even know our own blind spots. We drive all day and every day and we check our blind spots because we don't want to get hit. But in life, we don't check our blind spots because we normally can't see them. Others can see them right away.
Gotcha.
You got to have those people in your life so they can call it out and be open to it.
Yeah. I love it.
And that's that key, is trusting people so that you can have some deep conversations, understanding what those blind spots are. Hey, some people don't really care and they won't even look. Then they wonder why they're not succeeding in life. Well, they may be making tons of money, but is that succeeding in life?
Interesting. So let's put it this way. So people know what you do. So we talked about the book. What do you specifically do? So you do seminars, you do one-on-one coaching, consulting, right? Am I wrong? Is that kind of how you?
Yes, Sam, but I'll simplify it.
Yeah.
I work with executives to help them find their blind spots. And when I say executives and leaders, to me, everyone's a leader. If you're leading a household, you're a leader. If you're leading a team, you're a leader, and executives as well. And then my business partner and I, we've launched a leadership program where we take this and transform teams to become high performers by removing all of their blind spots, increasing their emotional intelligence, getting them vulnerable, getting them to talk, getting them aligned so that they can actually become incredible teams. And we use a model that's sustainable. A lot of these leadership programs or keynotes, I used to do keynotes. I love keynoting, but then I hate keynoting because you know what? At the end of my keynote, I don't know what I've transformed. So the work that we do is literally about getting in front of people on a longer term so that our stuff sticks and they transform and they become an incredible team. So leadership programs and executive coaching help people find their blind spots, help teams overcome their blind spots so they can become high performers.
How do you do that process? Is it a workshop? Or they come away for they come there for 3 days, or is it something you do as a group Zoom? Is it how do you give people an idea too on how you kind of developed this.
That's awesome. Thanks for the opportunity to speak on this. It's an interesting concept that we have. We use a cognitive behavior therapy model, which means is you have to teach, learn, and share. So we do a 2 or 3 day intense workshop first with the teams, with all the executives and the leaders and the managers. Then once a week, between 14 to 20 weeks, we speak with them about each model. So it gets ingrained. They are actually transforming after week 1, and they're learning. Then they're taking that and taking it to their teams. Now it's a funneling system. So we teach them, they go teach their teams. And they do this over 14 to 20 weeks, and they transform into this incredible team after that. And this stuff sticks because now we're teaching, sharing, and learning.
How are you doing this in Canada now? Because say I'm in the United States and people want to come and do this. Are you doing this now online? Or you can't obviously do it personally unless maybe Canadians. Am I wrong? How are you doing this right now?
Yes, and all depends on the company. I'm working with a company right now, and majority of it is in person, but a majority of our work that we're doing is online. And that's the nice thing about COVID. It's allowed us to create differently. And so we're also doing hybrid. So Kevin, my business partner, is in Arizona. The client that I have is in Vancouver. He Zooms in. Some of those leaders Zoom in. So it's a Zoom and a hybrid an in-person model. All of my executive coaching that I do is all online.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
What's the next phase for you that you think like kind of moving forward? You're doing this. Do you plan on writing another book, or do you plan on maybe doing a YouTube channel, or is there any different, maybe a podcast? I don't know. What's kind of, you're always going in different directions kind of, and I love that about you. You're always evolving. What's next?
Well, thanks you said that. I'm actually trying to get more of a niche happening. I don't want to be going all different directions. The work that we do is so important. Kevin and I can't just be everywhere doing it all. So we're actually training coaches to work with us so they can help us deliver the model as well.
Gotcha.
So our job is to bring more coaches on board with us and help them, first of all, get business, work on their imposter syndromes, work on their blind spots, so they get some revenue as well, but they get a chance to impact people. And then we have the model to help them do that.
So if somebody comes to you wanting to be a coach, or do you find others that you think would be great at coaching?
We're looking for coaches that really want to make an impact. If somebody's starting off as a coach, they probably wouldn't be the right fit for us for the leadership program training. We're looking for an established coach that already works with teams.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's all good stuff. I mean, I think, how did I asked you once, because you were doing, when I hit you up originally, was it for keynote speakers? It was a master class.
You call me up for mastermind. So I still do my mastermind classes or mastermind groups. We still have them. We have executive groups. We have small business owner groups. We have individual groups as well. People that are just looking for personal development. And our masterminds they're fun because, they're once a month, 4-hour evenings, and people get so much, they build a community out of it as well. And then the other thing Kevin and I have done is every Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific time, we have something called BLINDSPOT Thursdays. I've yet to see you there, Rich. I want to see you there one of these days.
I didn't know about this. Okay. I got to read the book. I don't know.
You got to read the book.
I got to get the book. I was so excited for you. And then I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I knock books out.
Well, if you just, blindspotsglobal.com/BS Thursdays. I'll send, maybe you can put this on the show notes. I'll send you the link as well, Rich, but show up to BlindSpot Thursdays.
Yeah.
It's a group coaching session for anybody who's ever taken our assessment. It's free, no charge at all. And people come there, they learn about different models that we're dealing with.
That's wonderful. Please send me whatever you want me to put on there. A lot of times I write a description on what we talk about, but I think what works best a lot of times, not to be lazy, but I write up all these things and then I send it to, like say, I'd send it to you and then they look at it and they're like, well, can you add this? I'm like, how's this? You send me what you want. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And we'll take it from there because I don't want to miss anything. Obviously, your website, your email, if you want to put your phone number, whatever else you want to put, I'd love to. I talk a lot about, I want to give other people a voice on my podcast because I'm about helping with self-confidence and, if it's image, fitness, health and wellness, it could be style, relationships, but my way isn't always the right way. But I love showing another person, I guess you could say, that's doing amazing things, that because most people aren't going to maybe gravitate towards what I do or what I teach, but they may, for some reason or another, what you're teaching, your books, your information. And I want to thank you for doing this, because I think, I just love giving people a voice, or at least my audience seeing other people other than myself just doing, videos. So
I love that, Rich. And let me ask you, how can we as a community help you as well?
I don't know. It's a good question here. I've kind of tried to really, I was doing a lot of men mainly because most of my audience, 18 to like 40, 45 is like 80, 90% men. Most of my YouTube is mainly men, but a lot of men are on YouTube in general. But I'm going to be doing some different thing with women as well. But I was really pushing relationship type, or helping men find the woman or women of their dreams, even going through a bad breakup or divorce. But then the pandemic hit, and I'm all about building friendships with women first, not just kind of being a pickup artist or just dating multiple type of women. But the pandemic kind of hit, and then people kind of now are kind of a little, I can't say scared, but there's a lot of issues. Who's vaccinated, who isn't, who wears a mask, who isn't. And it's kind of become much different, I think, the dating scene or just meeting people in general. So I kind of went more in the health and wellness and image type thing. And I'm also going to be doing a new podcast. It's going to be called The Queen Pin and the Wingman. So I have it's a really cool woman I know that she's really into helping people save money. And I am too. I try to teach men how to save money affordably. So I'm going to kind of start dipping into maybe helping women as well. They seem to gravitate more towards me when it comes to certain things than a lot of men. And they're a little more open-minded. So that's the route I'm going. I don't know how that works with you.
I love it. It's really simple. I work on the inside, you work on the outside. Let's make it happen.
I do. That's, my buddy used to say that he had a PhD. That's exactly his thing. He's like, Rich, because he was a psychiatrist. He's like, I'm all in, you're all out. Yeah. And I like working from the outside in. And I do like helping people internally. I don't have maybe the knowledge, but I'm, again, like yourself, you have a no nonsense approach. I mean, I think that's even in your description in LinkedIn, correct? What is it? It's something similar to that. And I love it.
It's called I'm a blind spot navigator.
Yeah, that for sure. Yeah. So yeah, I am all really more about the outside. There's no question about that. But, losing weight, gaining weight, but it's really about image. I don't care if you put on a pair of shoes, whatever's going to start that person's process to start truly believing in themselves. It could be a haircut, pair of shades, because let's face it, a lot of us, it takes a lot of time to change people internally, mentally, but by doing some small things externally is sometimes a game changer. And I start small. Anything I do, I call myself a sloth. I'm not here. If you want to lose 30 pounds, I'm not the guy you're going to do it in 60 days. I'm looking at a year. When you want to look a certain way, I don't want to change your entire identity unless you want to in a month, because you may change your entire identity or you may do these things and then you don't even like that. So it's a slow process with me, and we slowly figure out what you truly, for one, want to build upon.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm glad you said that, because there's no such thing as a quick fix. When people come to us for, hey, find our blind spots and let's get on with our teams. And I go, great. Do you have 18 months?
Right.
And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, we'll transform you today, but it's going to take 18 months for you to live it.
Yeah.
And really see that transformation happen. So it's a process, and everybody has to be buying into that process, but you got to start today to buy into the process down the road.
Yeah, it's a long road, and you have to understand you're going to fail a lot. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have these times where things are going really well, if it's in a relationship, or looking really good at certain times, or you're going to be depressed because maybe you can't all of a sudden buy the certain type of clothes you want to buy, or go to the places you want to go to, or do all these type of things. And it's going to take time. So you just gotta have some patience. My thing is having I guess, being very consistent and persistent and having patience at the same time, because if you want to look a certain way or build a certain brand, a lot of people come to me, believe it or not, with even on my podcast, stuff, they're like, Rich, I kind of want, can you help me with my marketing or this or that? I want to look, can I take photos a certain way or do this? Absolutely. But it's going to take time for you, one, to know what how you want to look like, what you got to learn how to post. If you're going to do videos, you're going to have to learn how to speak in front of a camera. This all takes time, and it doesn't take weeks or months. A lot of it takes years or even a decade. So, and I don't mean to, I really believe that. And that's same with fitness. I talk about it's a long road. If you want to live to 70, 80 years old, where do you want to be when you're 70 and 80 years old when it comes to your health and wellness? What you're doing now is going to affect that. So that's same with your image, your identity, your all these things. So
you're awesome, man. You're awesome.
No, geez. Well, you're too kind. Yeah, I got to get your book and then send me whatever information. You were one of I remember when I first met you, and I think I stopped doing podcast interviews for a while because they're very daunting. It's a lot of work to do these things, especially normally I have this with me, my podcast. I got other mics, and I said, you know what? I want to keep this clean because I got to tell you, I think your photos and your imagery on LinkedIn or Google, they're mint. I love your photos. I show my girlfriend, I show a lot of people your photos, your exterior photos, your clothing. You're very stylized. I'm not just saying that to say that. I very seldom tell anybody that, but your smile, your look, I think it's just great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And, I appreciate the external feelings, but the internal ones that make a bit more of a difference for me. And that's how I can show up authentically. So,
yeah, for sure. Well, you're definitely getting that down. I'd also love the photos of you with around a lot of people. Yeah. And I see it where it's phony a lot of times. Yeah. I don't mean to get long-winded on this podcast, but I mean, you step up and we speak to a lot of people, and a lot of people take photos of them with a crowd in front of them, or a crowd, over the shoulder shot, all that stuff, all these people listening to you. You did something different. It almost reminds me of, God, he was in Italy. He walks into a town in Italy and everyone kind of keeps coming to him. I forgot what commercial it was, but I don't know if you ever saw it before. Maybe it's for cologne or food or something. And he walks in and he starts talking to everybody and everyone gravitates, but then everybody starts communicating with each other. You have some authentic, beautiful photos of you. You can tell you're so excited to be there. You're teaching people. They're interested in what you're saying. And they're enthused to be there. It's not some pitch bullshit where there's 5 guys sitting in a circle and you're kind of like this, or you're talking there. It doesn't have that vibe to me. It just is really, really authentic. So, yeah.
Appreciate that. And that is something I stand for, is engagement and talking to people for sure. So,
yeah, for sure. That's it. You want to tell people where they can find you here as well, as far as websites or anything you want to say before we end?
Yeah, this? Well, LikkyLavji.com. That's probably, you're going to find everything there. The assessment's there, the book is there, booking a call with me. One of the things I stand for is I want to talk to you. If you're struggling with anything and you want to move forward in your life, just get on my website, book a call. I'll do a call with you. No problems. Love to do that.
Yeah, perfect.
You're awesome, man.
Sounds great to me. It was. Thank you again. I can't thank you enough. You're one of my favorite people on LinkedIn. You probably know that. I love your posts. Yeah. I'll share your posts. I don't see, you know what happens when you get too many people on LinkedIn though? You don't see as much as I think the people that you want to see a lot of times, because it becomes, and I think you have this too, a massive list. So if you got 7,000 contacts, but I want you to know, I love seeing your posts. If I see them, I'm going to always like them or comment because they're just very inspiring.
Great. I love it. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
That's all I got for you today.
Good. Let's go transform the world together. Yeah. Inside out. Inside out.
Exactly.